I know how I got here. I know who my dad was. I know what society I grew up in. I know the shame and guilt I felt. I tell people this all the time. I'm about to get real deep for you. I never made love to a woman until my wife. Now, I had a lot of sex before my wife, but I never made love. And I never made love because I never knew what that meant.
Let's impact some today. I think we're gonna do a great job.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Man Podcast, where we are here to connect men in pursuit of their potential. Join us as we embrace discomfort, cultivate community, and put wind in each other's sails. Now, we're just warming up, but before we jump into the episode, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you can get a new episode each and every single week. To the fellas that are watching and listening, I encourage you to check out the Noble Knights Men's Group, where you can find the support, accountability, and the mentorship you need to achieve your goals. Join us and become a part of a community of like-minded men on a mission to improve themselves and increase their capacity for life. And I'm excited because we're getting some wind in our sails for my guest today, abundance and personal freedom coach, father, husband, and best-selling author, Preston Smiles, joining me on the podcast. Preston, it's great to have you on, man.
Let's go. Yes, sir. It's great to be on, man, and it's great to see fellow chocolate people, doing their thing. That's one of my favorite things on the
Yeah.
planet is when I see people who look like me doing their thing. It's beautiful, bro.
Yeah, man, no, I love it. And I was just joking this morning. People talk about, and I'm dark chocolate, so I'm like 80% cacao, right?
Mhm.
I'm bitter before I'm sweet. Preston,
Ah.
I want to make sure that the audience gets to meet you and feel some of the fantastic vibes that I've already got. And so, speak to the audience, introduce yourself, talk about who you are, what you do, anything you find relevant, and then we could jump into some of our questions and some of your story.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. When it comes down to it, I, ultimately believe that we all have a similar purpose, and that's to reflect and reveal God's love in only the way that we can individually. And how that shows up and manifests in my world is I write books, I lead workshops and seminars. I have a community called the Spiritual Millionaire Academy, where I help people who are tuned in, tapped in, really come into right relations with abundance and therefore money. I've been in this space since 2005 when I had a heart condition come up and I didn't want to die. So I was 25 years old then. I'll be 45 this year, and it's been a wild ride. I was making 36K a year 11 years ago. And, now I'm multimillionaire. I'm sitting here on 4 acres. I got all the cars and toys and houses. And um, for me, my job now is to bring as many people up the mountain, and not the mountain of more toys and things, but the mountain of understanding that we only get one swing at this thing in these skin suits. And our biggest job is to recalibrate our nervous systems and build a somatic body to hold everything we say we want and then some. So I help people from a somatic nervous system perspective actually build a body that can hold it, not just manifest it, but hold
Mm.
it, hold a wife, hold children, hold the business, hold the money, hold the frequency of God coming through your body, all of the above.
I love that because I mentioned increasing our capacity for life, and you just perfectly articulated it's the holding and the capacity of funneling through the blessings in which we hope to channel into the world and into our reality.
Yes.
And
Facts.
so many guys get overwhelmed because they take on more than they can hold.
Mm-hmm.
They take on more than they can handle.
Mm.
And it's a never ending to-do list, and it's constantly, no matter how much abundance they might have in their life, it's not enough, and it's the goalpost always moving, and it's a never ending exhausting hamster wheel that too many of us are familiar with.
Facts.
um we've heard the concept of a financial millionaire. Um,
Mhm.
what is a spiritual millionaire that you alluded to?
Yeah, it's somebody who understands that money is a tool that they're willing to use, but it is not the
Mhm.
food. It is not what sustains us. And so a spiritual millionaire is somebody who gets that money is just as beautiful as tables, is just as beautiful as iPhones. It's all tools that we use to express and experience life. And so I think there is a involution that has turned into evolution that is turning into a revolution where people are getting that we don't have to separate ourselves, that we can work within the system to point it at the stuff that does work. And so I help people um, get free from the inside out, regardless of their external circumstances. And by
Mhm.
way of doing that, which is really about nervous system training and nervous system healing first, then training. Um, by way of doing that, their capacity, their range expands. And through that range, money and all the other stuff that wants to come through can come through freely. Most people
Yeah.
are so clogged up with the traumas, the shame, the guilt, not just from their own lives, but from their dad, and their dads, from their mom, the church, and all the other things that have sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously wounded them. And so a spiritual millionaire is simply somebody whose lights are turned on and they get what this whole thing is really about.
That's fantastic. And I definitely want to jump into more of the approach focusing on the nervous system and expanding our ability to handle more. But as with a lot of great ventures, they often start with personal testimony and
Uh-huh.
personal challenges. I'm interested to know your journey into
Mm,
becoming a spiritual millionaire, your journey up the mountaintop to now look back at the path you've macheted for everyone else and
mhm.
help them navigate that dangerous jungle. What was that climb like from 25 years old, heart condition, not wanting to die, to 45, 4 acres, all the toys, and not just the finances, but of course the abundance within and without?
That part. Um, so, I had the good fortune and was blessed with some really heavy traumas early on in life. And and I say that now. I didn't always think that, but now I see that I was
Mhm.
entrusted with some of the things that occurred to me because I wouldn't be the type of person that I am. I wouldn't be able to go as deep as I do, and I wouldn't be able to help people like I do without understanding how far a human can go. Now, I'll go back to I'm gonna give you just a few highlights. So my parents um, used to argue about whether I was special needs. And eventually, my mom won out and they put me in special education with kids with Down syndrome, Asperger's, and who were, had some pretty extreme challenges. And because children are egocentric, meaning anything that happens to them, they blame on themselves, I took on the identity of the mess up, the dumb one, and the burden to the family, right? So I'm setting this up so you guys understand how my nervous system responded. So I'm a burden because I'm in special needs classes. Well, all humans have four responses when their amygdala, a little thing inside the brain that sort of is like a fire alarm, right? When danger comes, when the amygdala goes off, all humans have one of four responses: fight, flight, freeze, and appease, or fawn, which is a newer one that's been added. Well, many of us have programmed conditioned tendencies that we do more than others. And I had the conditioned tendency of fight. Oftentimes, um, what I made up for myself as a child was nobody was coming to save me. So it was on me
Mhm.
to figure it out. And because I had that, plus my dad was battling drug addiction and cheating and all the other stuff he was doing. By the time I was 13, I had already decided that it was on me, that our family was, excuse my French, fucked it unless I figured it out. So I cheated my way through college. I then got into grad school. And while I was in college, I had a skin condition come up. And anywhere that the sun touched my skin, I would get hives everywhere. Right.
Mm.
I'm African as hell. Right. But for some reason, um, anywhere that the sun touched, my entire body would be in scabs and inflamed, right? Face, everything. Nobody could figure it out. So they gave me steroids and they said, hey, every time this happens, put these steroids on, don't go in the sun, wear gloves, wear hats, all that stuff. So fast forward, I just keep going. And my fire alarm is going off nonstop all day, pretty much every day at this point, because now I'm in hypervigilance. Because there's a whole bunch of
Mhm.
other things, including gang activity and friends being shot and killed and stuff like that, that was now stacking. So now the traumas are stacking, right? And then there's stuff that I'm doing that is hurting other people. So now I don't just have trauma, I have shame and guilt. Now, all of this is a soup that I'm living in. Meanwhile, I want to save my dad. I want to save my mom. And so I graduated from grad school with straight A's. I decided I'm not going to cheat anymore. And I just want to see what I'm made of. And I graduated with straight A's and I moved back to LA. And I'm sitting in front of Abercrombie and Fitch with my shirt off one day as one of those dudes at the Grove. Um,
Hollister.
yes, yes, yeah, you get it, right? Back in the day, right? And,
Yep.
I got my muscles all oiled up and all that stuff. And in between the Asian tourists high-fiving him and stuff, I reach over to the girl that's standing there with me and I say, hey, man, something's going on with my heart. And she was like, what's going on? And I said, I don't know. It just keeps going really fast and really slow, like really fast, then extraordinary slow. She was like, yo, you need to see a doctor. I think 3-4 days went by. I eventually went to go see the doctor. The doctor said, you need to see a cardiologist today. You could literally die. So I go see a cardiologist. That dude, in that moment, saved my life. And essentially, he asked me two questions that changed me forever. Number one, what's your diet like? Number two, what are your stress levels like? And I'm 25 at the time. I'm a regular ass dude just trying to make it in LA. And I say food. He says, what is food? I say McDonald's, Burger King, Popeyes, a bunch of cheese, that just food,
The
right? What
strip.
black
The
people eat.
strip.
Yeah, yeah, just
Yeah.
what black people eat, right? And he's like, young man, that's not food. And I'm like, man, come on, what you talking about? Right? Remember, this is 2005. This is before organic and all that stuff. And he says,
Mhm.
that's not food. And I'm like, how can you tell me that's not food? That's what my mom eats, my dad eats, my grandparents, everybody in my neighborhood, everybody eats food. What are you talking about? And the dude's like, I hate to break it to you, but you need to research this. So, second question, what are your stress levels like? I start explaining to him some of the things that have happened to me in my childhood. And he says, young man, as a doctor, I'm supposed to just give you these pills that'll help you regulate your heartbeat, et cetera, et cetera. But as a concerned citizen, I think you should look into stress and diet. Well, long story short, I was so scared and I didn't want to die that I went cold turkey that day. It took me 2 hours. Remember, because I have the fight response, 2 hours of crying and feeling bad for myself. And I said, nope, not me. And I went from eating terribly to a vegan in like a day. Um, I went down the rabbit hole and watched Zeitgeist and this book, Asking It Is Given, and just went down the rabbit hole of finding out what the laws of the universe were that weren't being taught to people like me and you. And as I began to fill my cup, there was so much overflow that people started telling people, yo, P is like on some enlightened type stuff. If you having any problems in your life, go see this dude. Now, this is before life coach is a word. This is before influencer. This is before Instagram. This is back in the day. I didn't even know that God was calling me to something. I had no clue. All I was doing was filling my cup. And I got so high on my own supply that people began to come to me often. And at some point, I said, you know what? This is crazy. I'm just going to start this thing called Questions with Preston, and I'm going to put it on this new thing called YouTube. And
Mm,
I started a
mm,
YouTube channel, bro. And, at first it was like 13 views here, the X, Y, and Z. And I was loving on everybody. And after a while, it just started to take off. And I started to purposely, intentionally uh, up level my knowledge and my skill set because the heart set was
mm,
already there. And, you know, that has turned into a pretty epic career. Um, I went from making 36K a year as a surf instructor to, I went from that to 150,000, 150K to 300, 300 to 6, 6 to 1.2. And I just kept going. And that's just the like side effect. That's the byproduct. The real magic was that I never made any of that stuff my God. I was a beast and dope as hell before any of it manifested outwardly. And that's the stuff that
mm.
I teach and help people really step into.
If iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. But if you're a man and you're alone or listening to this, then who sharpens you? What's going on, guys? Ted Phaeton here, host of the Modern Man podcast, also founder of the Noble Knights Mastermind Group. And I'm just out here encouraging you to find your circle. Maybe you're on a personal growth journey and nobody around you understands the new mentality that you're possessing. That's okay. You can find an online community that will pour into you, will navigate your goals and navigate your obstacles, share their experiences, resources, and more. Join the Noble Knights Mastermind Group and try us out for free to tap into a community of men helping each other scale up and reach their goals.
Check out themodernmanpodcast.com.
Man, I love that. That is fantastic. And there's a lot of parallels in our story. And I feel as though you mentioned 45. I'm 36, and I would love
Uh-huh.
to, as this trajectory continues to end up in the same spot at 46, man. 4 acres, multi-millions. I'm speaking it into existence. It's
Let's
great to
go.
meet you, future Ted. It's great to meet
Yes.
you, future Ted.
Let's go. Let's
um,
go.
I I want to talk about the rabbit hole really quick because similar to you, those same questions, and listeners of the podcast, they know I have ulcerative colitis, an autoimmune disease attacks my large intestine, lost the ability to properly absorb nutrients at the age of 26. And I got diagnosed at 23. At the age of 26, had a massive flare up that landed me in the hospital. I'm getting a
Whoa.
CAT scan. They're looking at taking my large intestine out. At the time, I was what I would consider battling depression. And the doctor came in, asked me those questions. What is your stress level like? What is your diet like? And I'm eating the 20 piece, the all, you know what it is. And all of that. And the doctor was like, hey, you got you here. So you need to get yourself out.
Oh,
After getting out of the hospital, I'm on top of a mountain snowboarding. That's when I changed my mindset, my outlook on life, and that's really what pushed me to be here in Charlotte, North Carolina, morning meteorologist in the 16th largest city in the United States. So it's propelled me forward, but it's come with, like you said, jumping down that rabbit hole and looking into learning, or I love how you said purposefully and intentionally elevating my skill set. You started going down that rabbit hole. What are some things you learned in the process that you had to unlearn? Because I imagine there's a lot of things that all that glitter ain't gold. Oh, this is
mm-mm.
cool. And when we start going down that path, we can sometimes go down the wrong path a little bit before we find ourselves back on the right path. What did you have to unlearn along the way, Preston?
Yeah, man. First of all, that is crazy how many parallels we have. That is wild, bro.
Yeah.
That is like, okay, I see you doing your thing. Um,
Yep.
so the biggest or some of the biggest ones was that you can't keep all the old stuff and open space for the new stuff. And um, I teach my students all the time that elevation requires separation. And that sounds awesome when it's just like letting go of certain things. But what I realized was that the friend group that I had at that time was not going to serve where I was going. And I couldn't keep them and go where I was going. And so, and my dad used to call all the time and ask for $40, which he used to buy crack and other stuff like that. And every time that phone rang, my body would go into this hypervigilance and brace. And every time I braced and went into hypervigilance, because I didn't have tools to re-regulate my nervous system, I would just stay there. And then I would add on top of it, add on top of it, add on top of it until I exploded. And so what I realized as I heard the call was that I needed to separate from some of my friends and my dad and some of the places that I had been putting myself. So I made a list. Number two, I made a list of everyone that I did not forgive. And on that list was McDonald's. On that list was the white Jesus. On that list was the people who put me in special education. There was a lot. And I just gave myself once a day just an opportunity to find where I could forgive. Some of them, it was really hard. Like I was so mad at McDonald's for so long. And when they came out with the parfait menu and they ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm like, they trying to kill us, right? I had so much anger towards them, right? Um,
Yeah.
and yet, you know, y- I understood that I was punishing myself by sitting in that unnecessary anger. Anger is a beautiful thing, right? It's a beautiful emotion, but it becomes toxic when it's linked to unforgiveness. And so I just started moving through that list. The other thing I did that was actually really awesome and a lot of people get a lot of value from is I had this mushroom ceremony in Joshua Tree, California. And on the mushrooms, I'm out there like extraordinarily high. And I have this moment where I just see God everywhere. There's nowhere where God isn't, and I'm experiencing these blissful highs, just like, oh, everything is God. And I had this moment still out there where I said, I want to do this without the medicine back at home. And so that next day, the mushrooms had worn off. I drove back to LA and I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set 3 to 5 alarms in my phone. Every time the alarm goes off, I'm going to see the face of God, AKA, I'm going to tap into my joy space. So I call them the joy alarms. Every time the alarm goes off, you go into the highest states of joy. Well, I was doing that 3 to 5 times a day. Every time I did that, my vibration lifted, right? I was just a little more light, a little more present, a little more loving. And then it would wear off a little bit, but it wouldn't wear off where it was. And so that was a part of it. I think probably the hardest piece in the whole journey was continuing to work on the self-belief and worthiness piece, because I was a throwaway kid. I was a nappy-headed little boy from the ghetto that nobody gave one shit about, right? So, okay, I'm just another little black boy they throw through the system. Meanwhile, and this is a piece I sort of shared, when my friends got killed, my dad sent me to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I ended up going to an all-white high school. So I went from an all-black, Mexican, Samoan, and Filipino high school, Carson High School, to an all-white high school in Pennsylvania. And at that high school, it changed me forever, because I was like the Fresh Prince in reverse, where I went, to Pennsylvania, and I'll never forget this moment. I was riding in this kid Brad's BMW, and we were headed to a party. I was in the back seat. Everybody had 40s, and they had their seats laid all the way back, like you used to do in the old school days. I'm looking out the window. We're drinking 40s. We're listening to Outkast's "Wheels of Steel." This is the wheels of steel, right? And I had this moment where I was like, oh shit, this is the same thing that I was doing with my friends back in LA. But these kids have an expectation that they're going to Yale, while these kids have an expectation that they're going to jail. And it was like the Matrix. Like I like peeked through the veil for a second. I'm 15 and a half. But something was like, homie, what? and then woof, right? And now I'm back and I'm like, oh shit, this is a game and it's all set up for us to lose. It's set up for brown people to lose, and I'm not going to lose this game. And like, I literally was never the same from that point forward. I then started recognizing, and the biggest part, still to this day, I have friends with private jets. I have a whole crew of friends who are way richer than me. To this day, I'm still working on the identity, the part of me that understands that God has never and will never make a mistake, and I am worthy to be wherever I am, shining as bright as humanly possible, right? Because
Mm.
the whole world has tried to make us believe that our dark skin and our big noses and our nappy hair is wrong and bad. And so I'm working through ownership, right? Ownership, nah, king energy here.
Oh yeah. If I know the thing's gonna autofocus. That's a crown on the beads.
Let's go.
We have a thing in the Noble Knights. We say a lot. One of the members coined the term "king shit," and it's like, okay, what kind of energy? We like to finish the calls with the energy you're bringing into the week, and one of the members are feeling confident and ready when they're like, "I'm bringing that king shit into next week. I'm bringing the king shit.
Yes. Yes.
I'm on it. I'm on it." But you
Let's
mentioned
go.
that because we do have that within. That's who we are. Um, and it is just funny. Side note, Preston, I do remember for my whole journey, my turning point, and jumping down the rabbit hole of learning and watching different YouTube channels or whatnot. I knew you looked familiar, man. I probably was watching your videos and didn't even put two and two together up until
Probably.
now when you talked about questions with Preston. But I knew you looked familiar. I was like, where have I seen him before or
Yeah.
anything like that? So I'm going to say officially, thank you, man. Thank you for helping me get here already.
That's dope.
And not even knowing it. Not even knowing it.
That's
Um,
dope.
I want to jump into some of the nitty gritty of things you've alluded to and touched on in terms of the nervous system and the trauma, because a lot of folks listening and a lot of the guys listening, I imagine they might not be convinced that they have trauma. Big T, little t, whatever it might be, right? Like it's easy to look around at what we would call the materialistic things and be like, nah, bro, I'm good. I
Yep.
got it. You see the car, you see the house, or you see the job title, whatever it might be, and we use some of these materialistic markers to justify that we're okay in life, or
Yep.
maybe we're still in denial in one shape or form. Somewhere in our lives we're in denial and we're not fully looking at reality the way it is, and there's something underlying that's keeping us at this certain thermostat level. And
Mhm.
we get a promotion and we come back down, right? Or we get
Yep.
a raise, or we get a bonus and we lose out on a big bet, whatever it might be. um
Yep.
what is our nervous system doing when it holds on to trauma, and why does it perpetuate in our lives without us even knowing it?
Yeah, it's just biology, man. It's what's interesting and beautiful about being in this human experience is it's pretty simple once you understand. The problem is that most of us have never been taught. Like even in the self-development space, it's mainly about mindset. But there are three centers of intelligence: the head, the heart, and the gut, right?
Mm,
The body, there's more body intelligence than there is mind intelligence, and yet they're all connected. Um, so this is why some people will, talk to the cows come home about their dreams and what they're going to do. But if the body isn't on board, you will sabotage it, right? As much as this dude messed up, R. Kelly hit it out the park when he said, "My mind is telling me no, but my body is telling me yes." Now, here's the crazy part: the soul is already done. The soul knows everything. Both of our souls are like, bro, we got it. It's the body and the mind that we're trying to get synced up. Because when all three of those are synced up, we're at our most powerful. The problem is that most of us don't understand how much the things that have occurred in us and around us affect us. Right now, from a science perspective, we know that something can be passed down 3 generations back. So,
mm.
not just my dad, but his dad and his dad can pass on their money stuff,
I don't
their
even know the dude.
right, exactly, their unworthiness stuff, right? Through the genes. Now, if that was just it, okay, cool, maybe. But then you add in bullying, you add in car accidents, you add in seeing friends get beat up, you add in natural disasters, you add in moments at the spelling bee where you messed up and everybody laughed at you, and now we're stacking these on top of each other. Now, even with all of that said, it would be no issue if we released it. The problem with most humans is things happen. They are harmful. They're scary. They're hard to deal with. And then we push them and suppress them down. We smoke them away. We sex them away. We Amazon Prime them away. We intellectualize. We have people that come to our workshops. I have a workshop that does this called the Bridge Experience. We have people that come to our workshop all the time who will say, I've been working in therapy for 15 years on this very thing, and I thought I was completely done with it. But I went through 4 exercises with you guys, and it's completely up and now actually done. And it's because you cannot work body stuff with just mind stuff. So each of us, and I'll end it here, each of us is like a giant bathtub. And all the water in the bathtub is trauma, shame, guilt, wars, Palestine, Rodney King, Ahmaud Arbery. You see people die. You see people get choked out. It's what happens in you that leaves the lasting remnants, right? There's a new term called shared fate effect, where you see another Black man or somebody get choked out and you see yourself in it. Well, all that stuff starts to stick. It's in the bathtub. Again, now the spout is just pouring, right? Life is going to keep pouring. It's going to punch you in the face. It's going to knock you down. So it's pouring in. My work is about putting our hand all the way into that water and pulling the plug. And we pull the plug by facing off with in community. Because most of the time, the traumas, the shame, the guilt happened with other people. We are social beings. And so as social beings, we heal in social scenarios, which is why in my workshop, we have people get up and speak to some of the worst stuff that's ever happened to them and some of the worst stuff that they've ever done. We put them in mock situations where they then can breathe and recalibrate their nervous systems so that they can reclaim their power in that moment. Because the body and the mind doesn't know the distinction between being molested at 9 and the 36-year-old having that same conversation. To the body and to the mind, it's all the same thing. And so if we can recalibrate it at 36, we heal it for the 9-year-old. That's what happened to me, by the way. My body, because I had not processed any of the stuff that I had been through, let alone the stuff that my mom and dad had been through, my body started breaking down. My heart said, bro, we can't hold any more. You're so stressed out. You have not released any of this. You suppressed it all. Bro, I almost killed somebody when I was 17. White dude pulled up on the side of me on the freeway, and he called me a nigger and a couple other things. And I saw red. And I reached in the back seat of my car, and I had an orange. And I threw the orange so hard from my car into his. I hit him in the face. He slammed against the center divider. We're going like 60 miles per hour. He slammed into the center divider. Car spins out, starts flipping, and I just took off. And that was one of like 30 examples of me having unprocessed trauma that was spilling out on people I didn't want it to spill out on. That's why I'm so proud of you and the work that you guys are doing, because I have my own men's group, right? And I do my work with them so that I don't put that stuff on my kids. I do that work with them so I don't put it on my wife. I do that work with them so when a white dude decides to call me a name, I can be regulated enough to understand that that's just a hurt little boy trying to make me feel his pain.
Yeah. Dude, I appreciate your vulnerability and transparency. And our trauma gets stored up in our body, and it lashes out in areas of life we never fully comprehend until we look at it in hindsight. And it's like the
Facts.
quote that we've heard before. It says, if you don't heal what hurt you, you're going to bleed on those that didn't cut you.
That part.
just by moving around. Um, and being that I mean, you're very much familiar with men's work, and you've heard you alluded to it, and I just want to touch on something. It's that shame aspect, because there's
Hmm.
two avenues I've found that lead to shame that a lot of people hold on to, specifically a lot of men hold on to. And you alluded to that trauma of something that's happened to them, or
Yes.
maybe the worst thing that they've ever done, right?
Yes.
And it's funny because those are two of the categories I find that a lot of men hold on to, is something that's happened to them, or something that's the worst they've ever done, that they still hold shame around, whether it's
Facts.
shame as the victim or shame as the villain. They still hold shame. So I'd love for you to touch on that really quick for the benefit of our
Yes.
listeners.
Yeah, man. So again, I do these workshops all over the world, and I just got back from Australia last week, and I got another one coming up in January here in Austin. And I've been doing it for 10 years. And for 10 years, there's two particular exercises that are pretty confronting, but also really beautiful and people love, where we ask people to reveal something they still hold shame or guilt around. And let's say there's 100 people in the room. Out of 100 people, I don't care if we're in Costa Rica, Canada, Africa, London, anywhere, Australia, US, out of 100 people, 90, I'll say 85% of that room has been sexually abused, men and women, 85. And of the 85 that has been sexually abused, I'd say 50% of them went and did it to somebody else. So they got abused by a grandfather or something, somehow, some way, something happened. And then they went and did that to their little brother, or they went and did it to a girl. Now I'll share with you, just for full transparency, I have done things even in college, drinking, that I do not feel good about per se. And during the Me Too movement, I had moments where I was like, "Oh, I'm going down," because there are places where I went too far. And I've since reached out to every single one of the people, it was basically just two women, and owned it, apologized, said my piece in it, so that they can heal and have their moment. Nothing too crazy, not rape or anything like that, but just everybody has blood on their hands, right? And I'll put my hand up first, bro. I have done crazy stuff. I beat people up. I've stolen. I've done a lot of stuff that I wouldn't say I'm necessarily proud of. But what I'm most proud of is how I got back up. What I'm most proud of is how I cleaned it up. What I'm most proud of is understanding that you cannot disown that which you have never owned. And so our biggest work is to own, homie, this. I know how I got here. I know who my dad was. I know what society I grew up in. I know the shame and guilt I felt. I tell people this all the time. I'm about to get real deep for you. I never made love to a woman until my wife. Now, I had a lot of sex before my wife, but I never made love. And I
Mhm.
never made love because I never knew what that meant. I never knew how to do it. Because growing up, and this is no shade towards anybody's religion, growing up, I grew up in a church, and a very harsh church, that, and I was programmed and conditioned to believe that I was shameful and a dirty sinner. And so when I started jacking off, I would punish myself for the masturbation. I would punish myself for desiring women. Then when I would have sex, I'd be like, stop, stop, Jesus is watching, stop, stop, Jesus is watching, and I'd still go. Then there's this extra shame cloud because I still went.
Mhm.
Now, all of that, I'm not saying I may be alone in this, but every once in a while, not every once in a while, I'll just say this. Just know that I'm not somebody who preaches from a mountaintop who hasn't done his work. I'm one of those dudes that you be like, "Oh, that dude's real as fuck." Like, I'm in this. I still do my work. And the major message I have for everybody is we all got blood on our hands. Question is how you clean it off. Because what you think you're hiding, you're not. It's showing up in other ways. It's showing up in other ways. And, this is the last piece I'll teach. I work with people on finding their invisible opponent. My invisible opponent was my dad. Since 13, I've been trying to be better than him, trying to prove that I'm better than him. So because he did drugs and cheated and messed life up and lived on the streets, we went from having 7 BMWs and all the things to losing everything. We got our house taken, everything. I walk up to a boarded up house. Then that dude goes and lives on the street. So for me, I've been trying to prove that I'm better than him my whole life. Now he's dead, by the way, and he died from the thing that I didn't want him to die from. But once I figured, and this is 40 years old, at 40, I figured this out, that until I'm willing to step out of the drama triangle where I'm making him the villain and me the hero, I will never be free. And so what I did is what I help a lot of other people do, which is cut the second cord. The first umbilical cord gives us life. The second one holds us back from it. And that's our work.
Man, I can't even get into my notes, Preston. I'm just like locked in, bro. That second core, I'm just, dude, crushing
Let's
it,
go.
man. I do want to touch on the second chord because we mentioned the trauma that we hold on into our body and how it will perpetuate. And I love your authenticity and the fact that you are right. We all have blood on our hands, so you are not alone in this. Because I don't know anyone under the sound of my voice listening to this podcast that does not have blood on their hands or is holding on to something that
Mm-hmm.
they're struggling to let go of.
Yep.
What advice, what practical steps would you advise someone to take to
Mm-hmm.
start processing that? Right, I have all this shit in my bathtub.
Yep. Yep.
And I want to put my hand in there, pull the plug out. I want
Uh-huh.
to process this. I've held on to it, but I want to finally release it.
Facts.
How do I
So
start doing that?
it's super simple, bro. And you already have a piece of it set up. Whether it's with me or you or whoever it is, you find a safe space and you share. You find a safe person and you share. Because shame wants to hide, it wants to conceal. So as you reveal, you free yourself. That's number one. Number two, you have to understand that what you know of yourself is not who you are, but rather who you became. Most of what people think they are is a safety strategy. People come into my workshops and they go, I'm just shy. Bro, you're not shy. You just figured out. You figured out how to stay safe by being quiet. There's a whole nother version of you, an unapologetic, unleashed version of you. Shy is a mask you wear to stay safe. In the book, Healing the Shame That Binds You, Ken Bradshaw talks about how the mess up, the fuck up, and the overachiever are often operating from the same toxic shame underneath. They just have two different strategies for how they stay safe in it. The person who screws everything up says, I'm a screw up. I might as well. The person who overachieves and makes all the money and says, look how big my dick is, look how fancy my car is, still has the same toxic shame living under it. It's just a strategy. That's why, you know, in some of my friend groups, these guys have way more money than me, but they know I'm the richest person in the room because of this. Right? When you are amongst a beast. And everybody's got their beast-like qualities, right? But like there's a whole nother place that many men are afraid to go. And I understand why, because it's been used as a weapon against us. Big boys don't cry is real as hell. I didn't even cry at my friend's funeral who got shot in the head and died the day I decided not to go with him. I didn't shed a tear, bro. Not one. At 15. It was gone. So this is, I told you before we started, is my favorite subject matter, my favorite people to talk to. If you are on the other side of this podcast listening, because I know we got to go, I actually got to go pick up my kids. If you're on the other side of this podcast listening, I just want to tell you how much both of us, Ted and I, both appreciate you. You don't have to do it alone. And it's completely understandable if you are experiencing a part of you that feels scared and you don't know where to go, and you don't know up from down, and you did all the right things and you checked all the boxes, but something still don't feel like
Mm-hmm.
it. That makes sense, homie, because you didn't have the conscious mom or dad that many of us represent. I didn't get that dad. I had to create it. I had to make it. And now, as a father, I don't just father my kids. I father all the people who follow me too, because I understand we need elders. We need big brothers. We need people who are willing to stand on business for real, not just the outward stuff, but the inside stuff. So
Mm.
deeply appreciate it, bro. This is good.
Man, I deeply appreciate you, brother. 10 toes down trying to do it. And
Mhm.
since I became a dad, I even said on air this morning, and I'm like, man, I'm really becoming a dad because I told everybody to put their jacket on. And they said, oh, you didn't have your jacket on this morning. And I was like, do what I say, not what I do. And I'm like, yep. Dad's coming out.
Yep.
Oh
Yep.
man.
I love it.
Preston, this has been fantastic. I want to make sure that our audience has a way to follow you, connect with you, link up with you, and get more of the amazing work that you do and the information that you share. So what are the best links and sources to go to, man?
Yeah, man. Wherever you get your podcast, just at Preston Smiles, you'll find me. Most of my work goes on Instagram and YouTube, but Instagram more than anything. Uh, my new book, Spiritual Millionaire, uh, Unlocking the 7 Inner Laws of Abundance and Money, it comes out in December. You can pre-order it right now at prestonsmiles.com/book.
Loves it, love it, love it, love it. I'll have those links in the show notes, guys, so you can go ahead, open up the description on YouTube, or just jump into the show notes on your podcast app to get those links and get to that book. Preston, last question. We might have touched on it, might have been something that you covered, but I always ask this at the end. It's, what is something you've seen or something that's happened to you that shapes the way you view the world as a man?
uh, uh, the first thing that popped up was my wife having our first child. There's something so primal and so
Unbelievable.
beautiful about watching life uh, reproduce, watching her go to that deep state and place with no drugs in our apartment in Venice Beach, to just primally bring forth this little dude who chose her and I to hold him, to steward him, to elevate him, to amplify him. Uh, I think, sometimes we can get really complicated with all the mental chatter, but at the end of the day, we are also animals. And it is such a beautiful reminder of that part of us and how beautiful it is when love amplifies. Yeah.
Mm, it's beautiful, man. And dude, I was there. My daughter's, I laughed. My daughter's first face in this world was this.
Mm.
But it was the most beautiful thing ever.
Yes,
um,
sir.
abundance and personal freedom coach, father, husband, and best-selling author, Preston Smiles on the podcast. Thank you so much for being on, brother. It's been an absolute honor.
Dope, man. Nothing but love.
I'm gonna recap. I'm going to recap really quick a couple of the gems you left along the way, because I know a lot of our listeners are driving or working out while listening. There were a lot. I almost ran out of areas to put my notes down, but right relationship with the abundance. A lot of us are chasing materialistic things. We want the paycheck, we want the bank account, we want to secure the bag, and of course we want the house and the cars and all that, but those things aren't going to be the measure of who you become. I
Mm,
didn't want to die. When faced with the reality of this one shot you have, what is the decision you're going to make, and what is the change that you're going to make? The thing Preston and I have in common in our 20s, being faced with the reality of, oh snap, this is borrowed time, and how am I going to behave moving forward? 4 responses: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Which one are you holding on to? Which one is your body using as a default to move forward? Trauma, shame, guilt, this soup that so many of us sit in, that we're continuing to swim around. One thing Preston said, which I had to just highlight: anger is a beautiful thing. A lot of us are only taught to express anger or happiness, and we look at anger as a bad emotion, but it is not. Anger is a beautiful thing when properly applied and, of course, addressed. Money is a tool, but it's not food. And then elevation requires separation. Setting up happiness alarms. That practice sounded awesome, Preston. Something I might try and implement a little bit, see how it works for me, see if I could channel and willingly pull that energy of happiness. And it's what happens in you that sticks. When we talked about the trauma, and so many of us hold on to it. We're social beings, so the healing must happen in social scenarios. Everybody has blood on their hands. And when you think you're hiding, you're not actually hiding. Find a safe place or person and share, because what you don't reveal, you cannot heal. And be sure to connect with Preston or myself to keep getting more value, because men, do not be the lone wolf and go it alone. You have a community, you have a brotherhood, and men standing ready to have your back. Guys, I appreciate it. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this with someone you know that will get value from it. And of course, you can subscribe to get a new episode each and every single week. Love and appreciate you guys. And as we always say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow.